Hello and happy Thursday, everybody. It's Josh here with On the Wrong Lead. And ever since last week, all I can think about when starting the show is how Caleb says I go from low energy to high energy when I start this thing off. So I figured I had to come in with vigor here. And speaking of just low energy and I don't know, male pattern baldness and who knows what else, Mr. Mark Capitan. How you doing?
I mean, it's just from all the strays I catch, really. I mean, I've just been beaten down by catching how many strays every time you guys run drinking champagne. I mean, I think I watched I got this like, oh, wait until you see the stray you catch this week, and then I watched it, and I think I caught about 6. I mean, 2 of you are freaking brutal, man. It's just rough. It's rough.
With
Right in the
friends like
feels.
us, who needs
Who needs
enemies?
enemies?
Exactly. And speaking as an enemy of just all things, Mr. Caleb Knight, um, mixing it up in all kinds of, I don't know, just
It's been an interesting week.
I mean, you've been in like training classes for who knows how long all week.
Oh, I know.
I mean, you've had a rough week, my friend. You're just
I have. I'm very excited for the weekend. Not so much for the racing, but just for the weekend in general. It's been a long week.
So I got a question, Caleb. Are you working on Monday?
I am working on Monday.
Okay.
We don't get Monday off, and I'm not taking vacation. But it's one of those days where like half the office is probably on vacation, and it's a work from home day. So how much really gets done is up in the air. But I will be working.
Well, didn't you say that you have like a bunch of vacation you got to use before you go off to college again?
I do have some. Yeah, I was able to use some 2 weeks ago for a friend's wedding when I was back home. But yeah, I do have some. I do still have to use prior to August.
Yeah. Mark, are you working Monday?
It is technically a half day for us. I will be working from home, meaning probably getting about as much work done as Caleb will be.
Hmm. Good. I took the day off because I get 5 weeks vacation, so
It's
might
such
as
a
well,
good day to
right?
take off. A nice 4-day weekend.
Yeah, I have a lot of my coworkers actually took Friday and Monday off because they're just greedy as hell. So they got the 5-day weekend coming in. And speaking of days off and um, oh, never mind. Steven's already starting crapping here, talking about bathroom stalls and stuff. And we'll leave that one. We'll leave that one for the off-topic crowd in Discord. But yeah, it's been pretty weird week. We got the return of the smoke all over again. We got tracks canceling. We got we got it all, man. Like I just think and I talked about this on Drinking Champagne. I am just so looking forward to Saratoga starting. Like it is just going to be such a breath of fresh air, and I am just so afraid that Saratoga might be Keeneland 2.0, where you're just super excited for the meet to start, and then within 3 days you're like, why was I excited for this meet to start? Um, so yeah, it's gonna be it'll be fun though. I mean, I think it'll be a nice reprieve. Hopefully they keep the field sizes up and don't turn into Finger Lakes East. And they figure it out there. But Sheets player, obviously someone related to either Mark and or our friend Tommy. He says he's going to Los Alamitos live on Saturday. Can't wait. Never been there. Mark, as someone who has been to Los Alamitos, what do you think about it?
It's a very interesting juxtaposition. It is one of the prettiest tracks I've ever been to. You're sitting there, you're looking at, the gorgeous mountain scenery, the sun sets over the west, it's beautiful skies, it's just absolutely gorgeous, and you're betting on $1,500 non-winners of 3. It's a very odd vibe, but very cool track, very historic. Got a really great feel to it, and some of the best on track food I've ever had. Really cool, like obviously homemade, local, like somebody like actually put work into creating it. It's not come off a truck or something. Good stuff.
And Stephen Fox probably dropping the biggest truth bomb that we've seen in chat in a while. Parks greater than
Ooh.
He
Saratoga.
keeps wondering how he gets muted. This is how he gets muted.
I did see that Lake Billy Rogers made a return, but
Just it came east this time.
it came east to Parks.
But of all the shit that goes down at Parks, I don't know if it's you, Josh, or someone posted on Twitter, like Parks going down for a puddle in the stretch is like Al Capone getting jail time for tax evasion.
Tax evasion.
Yeah,
All
that
this
was
you could get him for or get Parks for, like that is just. I hope it happens. But
The fact of all the potential HISA violations that they could have ever potentially had, and this is the thing we're going after them for.
the worst part of
I'm here for
the worst part of all that is in that race. I had an 11-1 winner cross the finish line first. Later got DQ'd, and a 6-1 got put up and knocked me out of the pick 4 there. And the fact that I have to keep on seeing that replay and knowing what's happening, and just that being all over Twitter is just very infuriating.
Was it only one race? Because I saw one race where the two horses in the lead went around the puddle or the lake.
Oh
and
yeah, I
then
mean
the,
it was there.
The
the
other
whole
two, they
time.
went right through it. So it was like it clearly was more than just one race.
Yeah, it was there the whole day, and like I said, of course, I got DQ'd in that race.
I mean,
And,
the best part is you can see like the tractor marks from when they harrowed the track, and you can just see it like skirt around the pond, just like with the curve. They didn't even try.
That's so funny. But yeah, we got a really good weekend of racing. I think Mark was just poo pooing this card left and right. But I actually think this is a pretty good card. Caleb, what do you think?
I think it's a pretty good Ellis card.
There we go. That's exactly was my sentiment. This
You
is
know,
this is an okay card for Ellis the end of June. This is not a great card.
We're in the dog days of racing a little bit, kind of in that lull post Belmont, pre Saratoga. It's probably the best card in town this weekend, but almost certainly is the best card in town. I think the Stephen Foster came up a pretty neat race. The card in the hole is fine. I'm not like super excited to go bet it, but it's not bad.
Oh, so you're not going to bet it, Caleb?
Well, I'm not going to bet it. I'm not excited to bet it.
I mean, they have multiple pick 5s, so we know you're going to be involved.
Oh man. Yeah, so we're gonna kind of take a look at what ends up being the late pick 6. Not necessarily the fact that we want to play the late pick 6, because I don't think it's a force out today. I think maybe it might be on Sunday if they run. I'm not sure, but if it ends up being a force out, sure, play it. But otherwise, we stand pretty firm against the jackpot wagers. So, but we'll take a look at this. There's a stakes. It does start with a stakes race here. Race 6, the Kelly's Landing, for 3-year-olds and up, going 6.5 furlongs on the dirt. Your 2-1 favorite is Bango, the Churchill Downs specialist. And he has run at Ellis Park 3 times and he's got 1 win, but his record at Ellis Park is far lesser than what he's done at Churchill Downs. And I kind of got a fade on him because of it. I think there's a couple other horses in this spot that are as fast, if not faster, than Bango. And I think that he really is kind of a Churchill Downs specialist. I think you can kind of get around the 2-1 favorite here. Caleb, what did you think?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Josh. I think there's a couple horse for course kind of horses in this race. Bango obviously being the Churchill specialist, and I expect him to show up with a fine race. I don't think he's going to run terribly. He probably hits the board, but he does seem to just be a different animal over Churchill. So this is not one that I really thought that I needed. What is likely going to be a favorite or maybe second choice in this race. Surveillance is another one who seems to be somewhat of a fairgrounds horse for course. Not one I'm interested in this race. 6-1, so I'm not really going to spend too much time talking about why I'm not using him, but just kind of on that similar train of thought. He just strikes me as one that seems to be better at the fairgrounds. So believe it or not, I ended up on 2 horses in this race that if you would have asked me without handicapping who I would have, I never would have guessed these two horses. But I'll start with probably the more obvious one, who's the number 5 Marsalis. I tend to think that 6-1's maybe a bit of a weak line there. Yeah, I see Josh has this horse marked off as an A. And if you look at this race, he just seems like the only leader in the race. I mean, Fortin Hill has sometimes flash speed. Bengo has occasionally been forwardly placed, but this seems like the most textbook definition of your true leader in the race. He's coming off a bit of a layoff. There are some questions. He kind of tailed off towards the end of last year in his form cycle. Despite the fact he was winning, he kind of backed up on figures a little bit. But I think coming back, in a spot like this, I don't think there's any monsters in here. First start as a 4-year-old, it's probably fair to expect some improvement. And this is a horse that I think should get a very good and comfortable trip on the lead in a race that doesn't have a ton of other speed on it. Rosario on the leader is always a bit of a risk, but I thought that this was a horse that really just makes a lot of drink, but makes a lot of sense in here. From a pace dynamics perspective, I think he gets a good trip on the lead, and he's not really that much slower than some of the shorter prices. I don't think we get 6-1, but he's probably the horse I'm most interested in. I have one more, but I'm curious where you landed, Josh, or you, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I not to just to kind of piggyback off what you said here, and hello,
Yeah,
Charles. Charles showing up here, but yeah, I love Marsalis in this spot, and I'm kind of looking at the fact that this is a horse coming in. I know he's coming off a layoff, but this is a horse that's 3, 2, and 0 in 5 starts. Has shown up every time. This is just a Steve Asmussen special where this is the type of horse that he brings into Oak Lawn or Churchill, wins these listed stakes, right? I mean, how many good sprinters does Steve just have at the ready, right? And so I think the fact that him and Stone Street are sending this horse here, and he doesn't have anybody else in here. I think he thinks pretty highly of this horse here. So I love Marsalis. I agree with you. I think he seems like the lone need the lead type. If we look at the optics plot, he is a Q1 circle there along with the 1 and the 2. The 2 obviously being Bango, but we I talked briefly before. I'm kind of putting a line through Bango just because this isn't at Churchill, and if you really do go back and look through his form, I mean, he's just a different animal outside of Churchill. So I got the fade on him. The other horse I do like is the 7 Tejano Twist coming into this race, and this is kind of like you look in this horse's past performances and who this horse has run up against. Any of the horses that have finished in front of him in the last 3 races would be super short. Well, I mean, with the exception of Bango, would be super short in this spot. Gunite, I think, would be a short favorite. Cody's Wish, obviously, Hoist the Gold, who we'll see a little bit later. Skelly, who we've talked about with Steve Asmussen. I just think that he's in a much softer spot in here, and he's shown the ability to close in both a fast and the slow pace. So if there's not a lot of pace in front, I expect Francisco is going to have the horse forward enough that he can make that one run and not have to make up 7, 8 lengths or whatever. Maybe be more like four lengths off. So I really like Tejano Twist in here. I like I said, I just think he's getting a much easier spot here, and I just think that he's probably the best and classiest horse in this race. If you just toss everything out, so I'll go 5 and 7 here as kind of my top picks. Mark, tell me why you're using Bango, because you probably singled the 2-1 favorite like a chalky and weasel you are.
I did not. I don't have anything inherently against Bango. Can he win? Sure, but should he be 2-1 in this field? I just don't think so. I don't think he's done enough on. I don't think he's done enough to say he's that much better than anybody else in this field. If he wins, I'm not going to be shocked. But if he does win, he'll probably be doing it without me backing him. I know you guys are really high on Marsalis. I don't hate the horse, but his performances in his last 3, his last 2 at least, have just not been fast enough to really compete with what some of the others in here have been running. If he somehow gets loose on the lead, I like him a lot more, but I don't really think he does. I think he has pace pressure both inside, to the inside. So I actually my top choice, I know Josh has already talked about Tejano Twist, so my top choice in here is actually the longest price on the board, and that's the one Fortin Hill. Fortin Hill seems to be a horse that, obviously, if you look at his last race, he was probably going a little further than he wants to go, and he ran into Cody's Wish, who's an absolute monster and is by far and away the class of this field right now. And if you start going back a little bit, he's a horse that kind of wins every other effort. He's run some really nice efforts going this trip. And, he's been a different horse since moving out of the Mott barn and into the Lobo barn. I don't know if he's, I don't really know. I don't expect any sort of, career tops or anything as a 7-year-old, but, I think he fits pretty darn well with this field, at least on time form figs wise. They give him a 117 2 back, and that fits right in with, somebody like a Bango who's running in those low, 120-ish range. And I think at least, I would imagine Corrales is going to be fairly aggressive with him. I don't know if he ends up on the lead or just off, but I think Fortin Hill at a bit of a price in here is kind of an interesting, other horse in a race, but I don't think there's just some massive overlay in here.
Charles B pointing out that he seems to think that the speed bias is overwhelming at Ellis, no closers at all at Ellis. So that would I
mean,
think help Fortin Hill out a little bit.
if you're watching today, you would definitely get that opinion. I don't know if that was necessarily due to a track bias. I think it was more due to the fact that they had a couple of really heavy rainstorms come through, and it wet the track down. And wet tracks tend to be more speed favoring. Horses don't like kickback and don't like to pass, so they come off as looking a little more speed favoring. That was my take. I haven't really been following Ellis that much the rest of this meet. Josh would probably have a better feel for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad you brought up the one mark because that's like the B that I have in this race, not the second horse I wanted to address, but it is one that I didn't know what to do with. He does have a couple of winning races on his form, like you mentioned. I couldn't decide. Is this kind of an every other race kind of horse? Does this horse just need Lasix? Considering both of those off races both came when he was off of Lasix, I couldn't tell what to make of him. If he's going to be 12-1, then yeah, I think he's worth a bet in a race like this. I'm not sure what he ultimately goes off at, but I think he has the right run style. A very a jockey that's near and dear to all of our hearts, and should be in with a shot at a decent price. I think. So I mean, he probably makes a ticket of mine, but I had some questions.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. There's an argument to be made. Is just a Lasix? He does have a nice race. And I realize he didn't win down at Gulfstream in the Mott Barn where he wasn't on Lasix. So I don't know. I tend to lean more on the every other type, and was just way over his head last out. And this is the race. We'll see. But I think he just the value proposition there was just way too good to not be at least use a little bit of him.
Yeah. So the other horse I actually landed on here, which will probably Josh can get the soundboard ready, was actually the number 4 Happy Jack, believe it or not.
Oh wow.
Yeah, this is a horse that I was pretty shocked, like I said, that I was going to land up on him, because if you told me initially, I'd be like, yeah, absolutely not. But the more I kind of looked at it, I'm like, yeah, in my mind, I had this idea that he raced like 30 times and he was like 1 for 30. But he's only raced 10 times. It just feels like he's raced 30 times because Doug O'Neill ran him in every stakes race for 3-year-olds from, February to, August, essentially, of last year. But with that being said, I mean, this is a horse that has flashed ability at times. He's not hopeless. I mean, he's won some decent races, including a decent and optional 80 at Churchill. He does need to get faster, but it's kind of more of a form play here for me. That was his first start off a pretty long layoff last out, where he was trying to close from next to last into a very slow pace that was won gate to wire on the front end by He's My Honey Badger. The front end of that race really held together, whereas Happy Jack's the only horse to make up ground. I thought that was a nice effort. He's always struck me as a bit more of a sprinter, despite the pedigree. If you look at his record, I think that kind of makes sense given where he's had his success so far. So I like the slight stretch out here from 6 to 6.5. Second off the layoff, I expect him to move forward. And he did kind of pair up his career top, or just shy of his career top, last out in that start. So, paired tops in the first start at 4, I would kind of expect this horse to move forward. Maybe not good enough to win from a pace dynamics perspective because I do think he'll be left with quite a lot to do. But I expect Happy Jack to run a good race, and I think you do get a better price than 5-1 on him in here. So he'll be making some of my tickets as well.
Yeah, I
Charles
didn't
B
quite.
calling Happy Jack the horse assassin. Apparently taking out horses early. Go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say I didn't know what to do with Happy Jack because he is a horse. I do agree with you. I think he's better at this kind of a distance. And O'Neill and Bejarano had a winner at a big price on the races today. So connections seem to be okay. It's just a matter of I think he's really up against it pace dynamics wise. Being that sort of I don't know if he's a one run closer or if he's just a off the pace type, but we'll see. I just don't tend to love these off the pace types in this type of a trip.
Yeah, that's fair.
I will say the one thing you can say about Happy Jack, he does have a nice run over the surface, and it was I believe Ellis is a 2-turn. No, it's not a 2-turn mile. Ellis has got that weird shoot,
It's like a
right?
one and a
The
half
shoot,
turn
yeah.
Yeah.
Saratoga 1 turn mile.
So yeah, and I think if you kind of look at him, like those 1-turn races seem to be where he shows up best. So yeah, I definitely think that you could kind of squint and see where you might see a little bit of improvement. So
Well, we got the green words too, according to Brian. We got the green words on Happy Jack.
no green words there. We'll have to double check, but yeah. Anything else on this race? No.
No,
I
not for me.
think we talked about every horse, didn't we?
Okay. Well, let's get where the real degeneracy starts, where we actually could play pick five here. And not a stakes race, but the seventh race here, an optional claimer, 80,000 and 2x. Not a stakes race, but you got some horses, that have names that might mean something to certain people, especially Murphy. You got Mr. Big News here. Hoist the Gold shows up in here. Trafalgar obviously shows up in here as well as another horse. I think that was on the Derby Trail really early. So yeah, you got a nice full field of 12 here. We're gonna be going 7 furlongs. Hoist the Gold is the even money favorite, and I think on class and maybe even speed figures and just like the horse the peep the horses he's been running with, I mean he should absolutely be a overwhelming favorite in this spot, but he's also a horse that hasn't won in quite some time. So I think you can have some questions based off of that. But Mark, where did you kind of land?
Yeah, I absolutely hate this race. I mean, on class, on speed figures, on pace dynamic, on all of those factors that you mentioned, Hoist the Gold should win this absolutely going away and for fun. The problem is he's 2 for 20, and he seems to really like to get minor awards. He hasn't won in I don't know my past performances only go back 15 starts, so it's been at least 15 starts since he's won a race. The problem that I run into is once you go past Hoist the Gold, I feel like you almost need to, have 6 or 8 horses in this race. I think the logical other horse is the 11 Brown and Brow, from Mark Cassie, who has, a horse that's, this is kind of the trip. Speed figures fit, going to be a forwardly placed type of horse, should be able to just sort of, kind of sit off some of the speed shown by somebody like Hoist the Gold or maybe sort of Awesome Air on the 9 and, get that first run. But honestly, it gets hard. Again, not a win machine, and it feels like a pretty wide open affair. I had a real hard time getting super excited about any horses. I had a couple prices, but rather kind of see where Caleb landed first.
Yeah, I think Oyster Gold wins this race. I get the concern that he's not exactly a win machine, but I struggle to see anyone that's really in the same zip code as he is in this field. He's the class of the field. He has a pace advantage in this race. He's got the best jockey in this race. I think it's a perfect distance for him. To be honest, I'm a little curious why they wouldn't try him in the previous race that we just talked about, in the Kelly's Landing, given that that's almost 3 times the purse. Yeah, I guess that's of a furlong shorter, maybe they really like him better at 7 and 6.5. But I think he'd have been a pretty formidable runner in that race as well. But anyway, yeah, Horse to Gold's been competing pretty much exclusively in graded stakes company, and even in the listed stakes that he raced in, he was running into legitimate, grade one, grade two horses. I mean, he lost to Gunite, Elite Power, Tahano Twist, Cavid. I mean, Gunite again. Well, I mean, some extremely strong horses, even if those races weren't, grade ones in the latter half of last year. And he's pretty much been in nothing but graded stakes this year. Ran a good second to Cody's Wish two back before just not getting caught up in a pretty decent pace last time out in the Met Mile and just kind of backing way up in a race that he was just way over his head. I think this is a realistic spot. And I'm not really going to try hard to beat him. I have two like C's that I'll play probably distantly behind him on maybe a backup ticket. One of them is Mark's 11. But yeah, I think Horse to Gold is pretty formidable in here.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do. Like, the Horse to Gold is the type of horse that I would try and beat in this spot normally, but I don't know. I didn't really see many alternatives. Um, there was a long shot that I did kind of like in the three, the Queen's Jewels here. And this was just kind of, if you go back and kind of look at the horses' dirt races, they look significantly better if you cross out the last two where he had two races here at Turfway Park. Obviously, four back at Churchill Downs going 7 furlongs. He ran 102 in a restricted allowance race on Brisnet. I don't know, Mark, what did that look like on time form?
Oh, it came back as an 81.
81. Wow, that's pretty slow. So, I don't know. Briz really liked that race, and so that kind of just stood out to me. If you looked at the optics plot as well for this race, the three sat pretty prominently up here in Q1 on the surface to distance. But I mean, look at Hoist of Gold, man. Like, just Q1 square, Q1 square. I mean, I think a little hard to get around, but if for some reason it doesn't fire, I would kind of like to have the Queen's Jewels on here. I mean, gets Flo Giroux to ride, which, with all of the comments that can be made about Mr. Flo Giroux, he tends to get probably the second best mounts next to Luis Saez at this meet at Churchill or Ellis for this matter. But I thought the three made a little bit of sense. I thought the price was pretty nutso, especially given some of his dirt form. And then the 10 Gulfstream Way was another one I kind of looked at. I can't really explain this one. There's just something about kind of looking at this horse's form. It seems to be really popular in the claim box. They ran him in that Knicks Go race, which was a pretty good race, and didn't do much running there, but came back into a claiming race, was claimed immediately. Goes to Norm Cassie's barn, and he's all right first off the claim. He's winning at a huge clip here. You got Go Ricky Santana aboard. So I don't know. I just kind of see a lot of reasons for this horse to improve. He's going to be forwardly placed, which is kind of, I think, where you want to be here. Is he going to be as fast as Hoist to Gold? I'm not really sure, but I thought this was an interesting alternative, maybe a B or C type you could maybe use in case Hoist to Gold, I don't know, misses the break or just doesn't fire in this spot. But I don't know. Hoist to Gold, I think, is going to be pretty tough to beat here.
Yeah, the only other horse that we haven't talked about that I did have written down, and again, this is probably a C type at best, is Mr. Big News. I know you mentioned the horse before. I don't think this is probably his trip. He's a horse that fired a big Kentucky Derby effort, threw a clunker in the Preakness, took a year off almost, then had two races in 2021 and then takes 2 years off, and he's now back here in the debut of his 6-year-old season. Horse that obviously has crazy layoff lines and everything else, but Brett Calhoun is good with these horses going with very long layoffs. I wonder if, I don't know, was he going a little further than he really wants to? Maybe the layoff did him some good. I know he's. I don't want to use the word classy, but at least there is some quality there with him, and he has some figures that he's run at longer distances earlier in his career, which would make him a player in here. So he's an interesting, very outsider that we know nothing about. The price has to be right. If he takes any money off that morning line, I'm not interested. But it's somewhere around that 10-1. He could sneak onto a ticket as a C for me.
Yeah, I'm not going to beat you up over a 10-1, but doesn't this just sort of feel like a prep race here?
It feels like a prep race. Yeah, I would imagine this is turn the screws, get him a prep. But the other thing is, yeah, I guess this is probably what, optional 80. Yeah, he's not in a black type or anything. This is probably where he lands as a prep for something else down the road. See if they have anything there. You're probably right, but you know,
Yeah, but I mean, if he doesn't take money, I mean, you could do worse.
yeah.
It's a vulnerable field after Hoist the Gold. I think we kind of all agree on that.
Yeah, and that's my thing. I guess it's more me going there is more looking for that outsider, trying to find that new fresh face who I don't know that they're not as good as Hoist the Gold, and Hoist the Gold is just so much better on any paper metric that I look at than any of the rest of this field that it's just hard to go much beyond him.
Yeah,
But he's going to be 3 to 5 in here.
yeah. I did take a shot on one long shot in here on the far outside, ready to pounce. And I just kind of like the way this horse has run in each of his last, honestly, 4 starts. If you look at time form, he has been trying to close into a slow pace, color coded blue on time form in each of his last 4 starts. And he hasn't embarrassed himself. I mean, he's moved forward a little bit, past a horse or two. And I just feel like he's better than those 4 races would lead you to believe. If you dig back a little bit farther into some of those summer Churchill races last year, he does have a figure or two that get him close to competitive with anyone who's not Hoist the Gold, essentially. And I think those figs might be just a little bit depressed as a function of the slow pace that he's been running against. All those races have been dominated up front on the lead. So I don't know that he's going to get a wicked pace to run after today, but I think it'll be quicker than what he's been running against. It won't be quite as fruitless anyway. With horses like Gulfstream Way, Awesome Aaron, and Hoist the Gold all likely to be somewhat involved on the front end in there. So I think I love the fact Tyler gets up here. I mean, he's the leading rider at the meet by a pretty sizable margin. For him to take the mount, I think that's an encouraging sign. We'll need to work out our trip, but going 7 furlongs, I'm not that worried about the post. Just needs a little bit of pace in front of him to materialize. But he's one that I think could be a little bit of a sneaky outsider. But ultimately, I agree that it's probably Hoist the Gold's race to lose.
What about this other horse that Sixer mentioned? Violent City, the 8. You guys take a look at this one at all?
Judging by none of us talking, no, I have not.
It sounds like Caleb didn't even know this horse is in the race. The way
I had to look for him. I'm like, Violent City, Ian. I mean,
well, this falls into the same thing as the sort of Hoist the Gold angle, except for he's way slower. You're talking about a horse that's 2 for 15 lifetime. I'm looking back, 10 starts or whatever, and I don't see that win. I mean, underneath in a trifecta, yeah, I mean, have at it. I would never talk anybody off of 30-1 underneath, but I just could never put that horse on top. I don't know what the angle you're playing is. If you hoping the front end comes apart, maybe, and he's the best of the first run closers. I just can't see it. He's way too slow on any metric I look at.
I will say that this horse does seem to fire fresh on the dirt. If you go back through his PPs, his best races seem to have been off the layoff here at Gulfstream and here at Keeneland. I know you're going back a year, and he didn't win either of those races, but
he also gets a weight break here, pretty substantial one at that. So if you're a weight person, sure. But
Caleb leaves the weights on time form, so I know he's a big weight guy.
Oh yeah, I'm very much big weight guy. Who else did he ask about? Trafalgar.
Isn't that who Mark talked about?
No.
Oh. I was sorry. I was half paying attention to an argument going in and off topic once again. So
wait. You were paying attention to the drama? Shocking.
Yeah,
I can't imagine.
I got my I don't know. I got someone tagged me in something, so I figured I had to jump in. Trafalgar. I mean, this was a horse that last year, kind of showed up, ran two of the Derby preps, and I thought this was a horse that we were going to see later on in this 3-year-old season. Maybe turn into something, but he ended up winning an claimer, and he got claimed out of the Al Stall's barn after that, and immediately won an allowance, and then just kind of threw up two clunkers after that. It looks like Sixer says it's tied for the highest time form US in the field.
I think he's referring to Violent City, and I
Oh,
guess
Violent City.
if you dig all the way back to that Keeneland April race for Violent City, it gave him a 121 in there,
Oh.
which you know I I'm dubious of. I mean, almost every horse out of that race regressed significantly, so I don't know that I believe it, but that is I think that's who he's referring to anyway. As far as Trafalgar goes, there's probably a race in there somewhere that he steps forward and really just stamps himself as the horse that we all sort of thought he might be, like a nice listed stakes grade 3 kind of hard knocking horse. But based off the last two, it's a little bit difficult for me to see it coming here in this spot. I'm not sure the cutback really helps him. And he's going to need some pace advantage or some pace help up front, and I don't think that's going to be to his advantage.
I will say though, this is a really high percentage move for Hartman. Hartman's 21% with a pretty solid ROI, cutting back route to spreads. I mean, that's the case you're making with Trafalgar, is that the cutback somehow moves him up substantially. But could he take a step forward? Sure. But I think he's just really up against it run style, unless you somehow have it that this absolutely comes apart at the seams.
All right, let's move on. Race 8 here, the Fleur de Lis. Mark, I think you said that this was your favorite race in the card here.
My favorite race. Did I say that?
I thought you said it was interesting.
I think
you're poo-pooing everything else, so this is like the one thing you said something positive about. So I thought you were going to be excited to talk about
like
this.
A pretty soft rendition of the Fleur de Lis.
Yeah, I think that's where I sort of landed, was the fact that not necessarily that I love the race. I just think I don't understand why Amore is supposed to be 8-5 in this field, and everybody else is supposed to be a whole ton pricier. I don't think this is a super salty field. I don't think that like Caleb said, I think this is a fairly soft rendition of this race, and I think there's some interesting sort of other new fresh faces in here that I think are pretty darn interesting. So the two that I was most interested in here were the 2-horse Moon Swag and the 3-horse Royal Take Charge. Royal Take Charge is 3 or 4 lifetime. Horse that seems to be getting faster, at least on every metric that I look at, every single race. And I think the horse has every right to take, another step forward here. And it doesn't need too much more forward off that last effort to be an absolute major player in here. I think the distance is right, and I think the horse is just in really good form right now. So I like the fresh horse. I like a horse that likes to win. I think Royal Take Charge is really interesting, and I know Moon Swag doesn't have a win since December of last year, and this may be a slightly tougher field than that, but second off the layoff for Brendan Walsh, and you're getting the best jock on the ground getting up on this one again. So I think Moonswag in here is the kind of horse that maybe, I don't know, gets a little lost on the board for whatever reason, and has a number of races that I think make her a pretty major player in here. So those are the two that I was most interested in, but interested to see what you guys have in here.
Caleb, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so I agree with Mark about the number 3, Royal Take Charge. I think she's super, super interesting in here. She's probably my top pick. I think she has, again, I feel like I've been saying this a lot, that just doesn't feel like there's an abundance of pace in a lot of the races in this sequence. And I think Royal Take Charge has a sizable pace advantage in this field. I mean, she either gets the lead or probably gets to sit just off of what I assume is going to be pretty moderate fractions. And she's proven at the distance in here. Alstall, 35%, third off the layoff. I think she's really primed for a big effort in here. So I do like Royal Take Charge. Charles B also likes her. I hope we don't get the price absolutely buried, because she does sort of seem like that horse that everyone's going to gravitate towards. But we'll see. I do like her nevertheless. And I have no knocks against Amore, the number 6. I think she's a deserving favorite. I mean, she's a grade 1 winner, albeit a California grade 1, but nevertheless, a grade 1 winner. Was riding a 3-race win streak going into the Latro N before just coming up 4th best in that race. She had a rough trip that day. That was not a ride that goes in Florent Drew's Hall of Fame list of rides, I don't believe, given way wide, way wide, and way off the pace when it was really not that quick. I don't think that race is bad at all, given that we saw, played hard, came out of that race to run, I think, 3rd subsequently out. Search results are in a good race next time out. They all sort of rank that for him. We know who those horses are. I think she's a very deserving favorite. Has the ability to be much more forwardly placed than she showed in that last race in the Latro N. And I would expect Pratt is going to get her more involved early. So similar to how we had her 2 back at Santa Anita. I think she makes a lot of sense and is a deserving favorite for sure. I had one more wild card, but I'm curious where Josh went.
Yeah, I mean, I had a hard time getting around Amore in the spot. If we pull up the old optics plot here, look to be really really strong right here in the middle of the plot. I will say the 3 is very interesting on this plot. You don't always often see the Q3 horse squares winning, but if there's no Q1 squares, they get a little bit more interesting. And I think that the 3 Royal Take Charge looks pretty interesting in this spot. I mean, isn't this the type of race that you would expect Pauline's Pearl to win? I mean, if you go back and look at the races that this horse has run, I know it's just completely is completely off form the last 2, but I mean she's got a ton of races that just win this race often. So I don't know if it's I mean, she's had success at Churchill, so I don't really have an excuse for the La Troyenne. The Beholder Mile, whatever. She went over. She got shipped over to Santa Anita, and we can maybe cross the line through that. But I don't know. I had a hard time, trying to figure out what to do with Pauline's Pearl because I think on back class and back form, I mean, she totally fits in here. But I don't know.
Take out reducer. Take out reducer.
Yeah,
Take out reducer,
take out
really?
reducer. Yeah, I think she's just done with.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh wait, so is that the? Hold on.
That's the dreaded double takeout reducer.
No, so
and Josh, I am disappointed in you.
We do have the takeout reducer, but we also do have this alert.
They both might apply.
They both, I think, apply in this case. Yeah, I was waiting to get crap about that. Josh, I'm disappointed in you. How do you not love this 7? This 7 is such a Josh horse. Hardy Constitution.
The 7, because
Yeah.
I think the 3 is probably better early.
You think that the 3 is faster early than the 7?
Probably, yeah. I mean the 3. Okay. I mean the 3s. I mean last or two back. I mean got out the gate and was what 9th to start. I don't necessarily know if this one's got as much gate speed as maybe she used to have. I thought the 3 of the speed horses, the fact that it's a new shooter, I thought the 3 is that improving type that if Amore doesn't fire, seems like the type that could win this race. So
yeah, I figured you'd see the 7, and looks like a horse that's got a bunch of speed early. And I realized she doesn't ever. I don't think she's ever been first at first call actually, which is something. But she does look like she's got a bunch of early speed and is 1-3 in a row. So none of those races come back fast enough to what should need to be or be needed to win this. But just seemed like a Josh horse. So.
Yeah, I mean, I know time form thinks she gets the lead in here, but it's not how I handicapped it. I think the 3 probably goes a little quicker, especially with the inside draw. But we'll see. There was one more horse that I don't think gets the lead, but could be in that first flight, and that's the number 1, Bellamore. That's the horse I don't really know what to do with. I mean, she's never actually won on the dirt, but she's run 2 pretty good races on the dirt recently. One at Churchill, one at Santa Anita. That race 2 back in the Santa Maria was pretty good to run to a second to Adair Manor. I mean, Adair Manor is a nice Bob Baffert trained filly. She came out of that race to trounce a field in the what was it, Santa Isabella, one of the another grade two essentially, Santa Anita. So I think that's a fine race, and then earlier than that at Churchill in the Fall City, she ran second to Played Hard. We saw what Played Hard did, who came back and won the La Troen, and she was only second by a length in that race. So I thought that was a deceptively strong race actually. So I thought Bellamore was an interesting player in here, and I didn't really know what to do with her, but she sort of feels like one that might get a little bit lost and on the board. And I thought she was interesting, and she probably makes a ticket or two of mine.
I have her marked down as a horse that I would definitely use. If you go back to that Fall City is just as fast as any of the best that anybody else has in here, if you believe that figure, and it is on somewhat, the local scene. So I think she's very interesting in here for me.
All right, let's move on here. Race 9, the Wise Dan. We're going to be going 4-year-olds and up. We're going to be going a mile and 16th on the turf here. And who is the favorite in this race?
Doesn't the Wise Dan being at Ellis feel a little bit like, I don't know, a little disrespect? Just, it feels bad. I mean, I realize it should be at Churchill, but even then.
I mean, they ran the Arlington Million at
yeah,
Churchill, and now it's going to be run at Colonial. So, I mean, Hollywood Gold Cup gets run at Santa Anita.
This is fine.
Yeah. Okay, this is fine. Got it.
Yeah, Set Piece is probably the horse that I just love to bet against. So there's absolutely no way this ends up on any of my tickets. Yeah. Apparently, Set Piece is Flo Giroux's favorite horse. I don't. He said it in like an interview or something stupid. So, yeah. So I don't know.
Flo says a lot of stupid crap though. So,
well, Mark, I know you're using Set Piece, so
I really don't want to use Set Piece in anything. I don't know. I mean, this is another one. Like, sort of like that first race where you're like, okay, Set Piece could win this race. Set Piece is extremely talented and whatever, but Set Piece doesn't consistently show up with his A game. He fires one, and then it takes him, it seems like 2 or 3 starts to kind of get back. Or recently, it's taken him a couple of starts, and maybe it's just he's getting a little older. And I thought his Arlington was a really huge effort. So I wonder if does it take him a start or two to get back to his sort of best stuff. I don't inherently dislike Set Piece. I don't have major hatred for him. It's just I think we're at a point in his career where he might not have been the horse he was as a couple years ago. He's very talented though. Could he win it? Sure, but at 4 to 5, man, that is really short. And the horse that I landed on here is, oh my god, I'm going to get crap about this. Is the 4 horse Get Smoking? Santana. I picked the Josh horse with Santana on turf. I did the thing. Oh, look at Josh has him as an A. Yeah, I mean, if I don't know how the turf is playing, obviously they didn't run on the turf today, but if the turf is speed favoring, he's going to be on the front end. He may have a little pace pressure up there from somebody like Hosier, but I think Get Smoking is been been in good form lately. He got beat by a little bit by Set Piece last out. So if Get Smoking can turn the tables at a substantially better price than you're going to get on Set Piece.
Yeah, I don't hate that take. My opinion in here is that could Set Piece win this race? Like, absolutely. But at 4 to 5 and going to be the most singled horse in the sequence, do I need a ticket that has Hoist the Gold and Amore and Set Piece on it with the rest of my opinions? And I just don't think that I do. If that comes in, I'm probably okay with not having it. And despite the odds, I actually think Set Piece is most likely the one of those 3 horses who is most vulnerable. So I'm going to go against Set Piece in here while also acknowledging that he could definitely win. He's just a much better horse at Churchill. And he's also shown up a few times at Pimlico, as PDT has mentioned. I just, he doesn't tend to back up his races like Mark said, and he comes from so far out of it. He needs so much to go right. He was probably best 2 races back on May 4th on that Churchill undercard for the Derby undercard and just got traffic and a bad ride. And that just happens to him too frequently given his run style. This is a decent size field. I think he's going to have a lot of things need to go right for him to get it done here. And at 4-5, I could just do without him. Amazingly enough, I can't tell if Steven's trolling or not, but I did land on the 5 in this race. Play action pass.
Okay, there's no way that morning line stands because I was waiting to the end. I was hoping no one would talk about him so I could talk about him. Go on.
Yeah, that's my top pick in here. I think this horse has just 100 things going for him in this race. I think that he gets a really nice kind of tactical trip. Get Smokin' has struggled finishing off races lately, but he probably is the de facto leader. There's a few others that may try to push the pace a touch. So I think Play Action Pass kind of has that option of either sitting second or third or taking up that pressing role. Either way, I think he slots in really nicely in here. That last race at Churchill came back extremely fast on time form. Looks like it came back respectably fast on Briz as well. But I was surprised at how fast that came back on time form. It remains to be seen how that's going to hold up over time, but as of now, I have no reason to think that's not a legitimate figure. And if you look back at what he's done, it's not that much of a jump for him. He's been an improving type for most of his year, if you throw out that dirt race anyway. I thought the last race was really impressive. He was the only horse that was even remotely in that first half of the field that held on. That race was absolutely dominated by closers that day, where the winners came from 7th, 6th, 8th, and 9th. So I thought he did pretty well to only be a length and a half off that pace and see out the race. And that was his first start in a pretty long layoff. I think getting second off the bench here, getting some fitness into him, I think is going to help quite a bit. And this is a horse that's proven over Ellis. He's 2 for 2 at the track here. Loves this turf course, loves this configuration, loves this distance. You get Guy Fleone on board for the second time. I just think there's a lot to like about Play Action Pass in here. I don't know if he'll get 12-1, but I'm very interested in Play Action Pass.
To no one's surprise, I did end up on Get Smokin' here in this race. But Mark already talked about Get Smokin' a bit. The other horse that I actually do like in this race is the 3 Camp Hope. Won that race that you were talking about last time for Kenny McPeak here. And I did think it was a little bit interesting that I believe, is this the race? No, maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking of a different race. There was another race where McPeak had 2 in, but I'm thinking of a different race here. Oh, I think I'm thinking of the feature. But Brian Hernandez stays aboard here. Rode a decent race that time. This is his first time at Ellis Park, but I just thought, with looking at the pace scenario here, obviously you got Get Smokin' here is going to go to the lead, but you got a couple of other horses that like to be forwardly placed. I thought that maybe a horse like Camp Hope might get first run here, and not necessarily be coming from the clouds like a horse like Set Piece here, the 8. Looking at the surface of distance plot, he's this big or high up here, Q2 square, so I'm thinking he's going to get first run here on the rest. But Get Smokin's also a really tiny circle there on the lead. So I was kind of between the 3 and the 4. Optics really likes this 9. I just can't get there.
I was about to bring that up. I mean, if you're an optics player, don't you kind of?
I just can't get there, man. I got excited, and then I looked at the form, and then I nearly threw up. But
well, if you're an optics player, don't you also have to like the 6 in here? Who I do like a touch.
The 6? I mean, if you're looking at the, if you're not looking at the surface of distance plot, the 6 does fit. I think that that Ellis race was at like 6 back August of last year. That one looks pretty decent. And then obviously JJ rode it last time out, which is the only reason why Mark is looking at this horse, because JJ rode it at some point in his career. So Mark's got to be on it.
Well, my thing is, if you're looking at surf distance, the horse has only gone this trip once, and the horse hopped the break, was very slow, clearly lost all chance at the break. So isn't the surf disc going to be
it's going to include all turf routes, so it's going to have
it would include all turf routes in that. So okay, it's not going to differentiate between the 8 and 8.5
by a 16.
Okay, cool.
But that one race and a 3 race sample size could skew the numbers for sure.
Yeah. My thought in here with the 6 was that last out figure again. We're talking about a really big last out fig. Again, and that was the second race of a form cycle. Maybe that's just a big thing for Lobo. This is second off a layoff, so it's an okay angle for him, but nothing phenomenal. There's a price where the horse is sort of right. And honestly, that Ellis race from last year wasn't horrible or anything. Not a winning performance, but not terrible. So the horse can at least get across the surface. Again, I think you're going to have to watch on Saturday and see how the surface is playing. But I thought the 6 was a little interesting in here. Sorry to cut you off, Josh.
No, no, you're good. Yeah, I mean, I looked at the 6 briefly, but I don't know. I kind of thought between the 4 and the 5, if I was trying to beat set piece, those were the 2 I needed for sure. Um, I think you guys made a really good case for the 5. So let's bring this horse down to 4-1 when the gates pop. But yeah, I don't know. I really like the 3. I saw that. Was it Charles? Charles really likes the 3. The fact that this horse has run on soft and good turf and won, and he thinks that there's going to be a bit of cut in the ground on Saturday. So if that's the case, maybe you do move up a horse like Camp Hope.
I would say that the Campo's last performance, if you believe it, also probably moves up Campo. That was a real nice effort.
Anything else in this race?
Nope, I was 5-4-3.
Yeah, congratulations to Hosier for winning. No.
No,
All right.
that's
All right, the big race is Stephen Foster, aka the Greg Callowag, with the return of Proxy here, fresh off his Oaklawn handicap win, and name change as well. We can't forget that one. But yeah, Grade 1 Stephen Foster. This is a really fun race, and of course, as you see me scrolling past the E8 that I have marked as an A. You can kind of see, I think, the fact that this track has been playing for all speed, and I don't know, my eyes just immediately went to the horse that I think is named just so appropriately for this race, the 3 Speed Bias, with Louis Size aboard, and almost won that Pimlico Special. Maybe went a hair fast up front, but still went 47-2, which I think is a decent clip, and he got run down by Rattle and Roll and lost by a nose there. But I don't know, with a little bit more of a speed favoring track, I think that this might set up a little bit better for the 3 Speed Bias. And then this was the race. I think Rattle and Roll is definitely in here with a shot once again, and I know Smile Happy is in here as well, and I just think the fact that Brian Hernandez decided to stay on Rattle and Roll when he had his choice to either stay on Smile Happy or go to Rattle and Roll. I would think of the McPeak horses that Rattle and Roll is probably the more live of the 2. And yeah, I mean, the only other horse that I kind of had any passing interest in was in Stiletto Boy, but that might be more a bet with my heart, not with my head choice. So
you saw Kent on the horse, and
I
you're
saw
just betting
Kent on the horse.
Come on,
and
let's not kid ourselves.
I mean,
And the race is running on July 1st. You know what to do on the 1st of the month.
Yeah, the rent's due. Pay the rent with Kent. What's up, Ryan? Ryan Howard showing up. He's saying, "What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. Good to see you." And I don't know. Stella Boy's got some figures that fit in with the rest of the group. I think he's going to be forwardly placed, but not necessarily on the lead with this group. So I thought he was a little bit interesting in this spot. But I honestly, I think this race goes through the 3 and the 4, Speed Bias and Rattle and Roll. But Caleb, I'm interested to see where did you land here.
Yeah, so I haven't heard anything or read anything, but I get the feeling that Rattle and Roll is going to scratch out of this race. I don't think. I mean, when Rattle and Roll won the blame, I mean, they interviewed McPeak, and we all know you can't really take him, for his word. but he's said they were going to give him some time off, point towards the Cornhusker or something else, Prairie Meadows later on. I mean, and this is a quick wheelback for this horse, relatively speaking, when he already was on a quick run back, which was already on a pretty quick run back. I mean, he's going to be making his, fifth start in essentially, 4 months, basically his fourth start in, 2 months. And I just wonder if maybe he was entered in this race, but because they weren't really sure what they were going to do with him. But as recently as 2 weeks ago on a barn tour, Kenny McPeak made no mention of running Rattle and Roll in this spot. I'm wondering if he's going to be a scratch, but I suppose we can't. We'll have to wait and see. But assuming he's in the race, I think he's respectable, but I do prefer the other McPeak, Smile Happy. I thought he ran a phenomenal race last time out, showed a lot of maturity compared to his 3-year-old season, was able to sit just off the flank of OTWL Power, who is a very nice horse, and just absolutely stuffed that horse into a locker. I mean, just bullied that horse down the stretch and looked really, really good while also dusting Art Collector in the process. I thought that was a outstanding race. He's really improved and really grown into his figure and form, it seems, this year as a 4-year-old. He just seems so much more developed. I really like Smile Happy in here. I'm not going to make too much out of the jockey carousel. I mean, Lannery's rode this horse a number of times where Hernandez has almost exclusively ridden Rattle and Roll, so I'm not going to overthink that one. Between the two, I think that either one could win. I'm a little more concerned if Rattle and Roll might just be a little bit over the top with his, fifth start in a relatively short amount of time, whereas Smile Happy is probably a slightly fresher horse in here with a little bit better spacing. So I'm going to go with the number 5 as my top pick in here. I respect the number 4. And to touch on your number 3, Josh, Speed Bias, I do have him written down as another horse to use in here. My reservation with him is that if he couldn't beat Rattle and Roll last time out, I don't see how he ever beats him ever again. Because, I mean, Luis Saez gave that horse probably as good of a ride as you could ever want from a speed horse. I mean, went moderate early, opened him up in the middle, got a 2-length cushion, dug in, fought, did a little drift, tried a baby herding. I mean, he tried everything to just get nipped at the wire. And it's hard to argue that Pimlico is not a speed favoring track. So if he couldn't get that job done there, I do struggle a little bit seeing how he does it against what I think is a stronger field in this race. But it's Luis Saez on the leader on another speed favoring track. And if you're going to give me 12-1, then that price makes my argument, worth taking a shot against, I think. So it just depends on the price for me. But I do think that last time was sort of the time if he was going to get the job done.
Well, hopefully Caleb is not right, and that Rattle and Roll does not scratch out of this race, because he's my top pick in here. And I think the reason that how I sort of got there is, there's a pretty good argument that Stiletto Boy, Speed Bias, and West Willpower all need the lead. And, in our day of racing where we've been looking at all these and saying, geez, there's no pace, I actually think there's quite a bit of pace in here. And I think there's an argument that 3 of these horses need to either be on or very, very forwardly placed to have their best game. And I just, I've tried to beat Rattle and Roll a bunch of times. He's not a horse I've ever been blown away by, but he just kind of wins races. And this year he seems like he is a very different horse as a 4-year-old. He's just been a ton better. So I think he gets, a pretty favorable pace set up in front of him. He should have a good amount of pace to run into. Hernandez has been great on him, and he's been really great this year. And I just have a really hard time getting beyond Rattle and Roll in this spot. Again, maybe he scratches, maybe something's going on. I realize that it is a number of races at a shorter window. Somebody was mentioning, though, that this is a win and you're in. So are they just trying to get him a Breeders' Cup spot in a softer spot? And I don't want to imply this is a soft spot, but this is probably a softer race than some of the win and your ends that you might get at Saratoga or Del Mar. So, trying to saying, geez, let's get him this race and then give him a couple months off, get him a prep, and then point for the Breeders' Cup kind of a thing. I just wonder if that's maybe just decided, hey, let's turn him back quick and try to get that Breeders' Cup entry.
Yeah, another horse, and Hello, good evening to Mr. Alec Schusler here, showing up right when we start talking about the big race here. I did also have Last Samurai written down here as kind of a B type, um, and I think if we do get the scratch of Rattle and Roll, I'm a little bit more interested in Last Samurai, just because I kind of think that this is a interesting off the pace type horse. Has run some really nice races earlier this year at Oak Lawn. I mean, maybe he's just kind of an Oak Lawn specialist. I don't know, but he does also have a nice race here at Ellis Park as well. Finishing third there to is that Injunction and West Willpower. But I know I thought the 7 was pretty interesting. If I remember correctly, I think it might have been kind of an optics influence in this spot. Does seem to be the type that might get first run on the rest of them. Um, but obviously, if you're an optics player, I mean, you do kind of got to look at West Willpower a little bit, right? Because it seems like West Willpower might be just as fast as this 3. But we do get a fire contention. We do have a speed rate of 25, which isn't really that fast. Usually, I wanted to see around like 40 or so before I'm like, all right, this might melt down. But it is going to be contentious. So you do have a couple of horses going for the lead. I don't, speed bias might not just get as easy of a lead as possible, but maybe Louis size is enough to kind of, put that horse over the top there. But kind of looking back, Last Samurai looks to be the horse that might get first run on all the speed in this spot, and is also the biggest square. So maybe that this is a spot where Last Samurai can maybe take advantage of the track playing a little bit more forward, and maybe not giving enough time for a horse like Rattle and Roll to come from off the pace. So 7 was probably kind of like my third pick in this race. I like the 3. I do really like Rattle and Roll in this spot if he stays in. But I thought Last Samurai was pretty interesting in this spot here as well.
Yeah,
And I
Last
think
Samurai I do tend to think he's more of an Oak Lawn horse for course. He ran pretty poor last time out without any apparent excuse. So I liked him in that race, and he kind of disappointed me. I'm like, well, maybe I'll give him another crack, but yeah, I just wonder if he's not quite the same when shipping out of his backyard. But at 6-1, I mean, you could do worse. Was a third pick. And yeah, it's surprising none of us really talked about West Willpower. I mean, the horse is
Yeah.
absurdly consistent. I mean, in the trifecta, 14 of 16 career starts. I mean, hell, in the exacta, 13 of 16 career starts. One bad race in his career, none of which, since entering the Brad Cox barn. It was certainly managed a little cautiously at times, but it was second in this race last year by less than a length. Lots doesn't need the lead, although he historically has gone forward. I mean, a lot to like here. And at 7-2, I mean, he might be the third choice in the field, third or fourth choice in the field, really, depending how much money the McPeak entries and then Proxy end up taking.
He's a hard horse for me. I mean, if I knew what the pace dynamics were going to shape out, I would know I wanted to use him a lot better. I think he's the best of the speeds, right? I think he's your classiest speed. Does somebody else go suicidal and run him into the ground and screw up tactics? I don't really know. But if you want to talk about the speed horse that's most likely to survive, as on a contentious front end, yeah, he's your horse. And yeah, and like you said, boy, he is just consistent. He never really runs a bad race ever. So no, I had him marked down. He's an interesting horse. I think if you leave him off your tickets, you're kind of asking for it, kind of a type.
Yeah, and he's one that I don't feel terrible about using, quote unquote defensively, because I mean he is 7-2 in here. He's not
Yeah.
8-5, and my biggest hang up on him is just a personal distaste, because I needed him last time in a race that looked like he just could not lose as lone speed in a 6-horse field, and he got blasted by Smile Happy. And then 2 races ago, I bet against him with Art Collector, and he just dummies Art Collector. So it's one of those horses I just can't seem to go on the right side of. So that always plays a role in some of these bets.
I just saw something in chat that just absolutely blew my mind in our private chat. What I don't even know. Also, no love for Proxy in this spot at all, huh?
I know one person that loves Proxy.
Oh, I mean, this just isn't the right price for Proxy, right? Like, Proxy has run races that make him a player in this field. Um, he's just not the consistent type. He never runs back to back races that are huge. And I don't know. He's just a horse I just don't trust at all.
I mean, I'd argue he's very consistent. He just might not be this good, but I think he
Oh,
always
okay.
kind of shows
Yeah.
up. My big issue is I thought he got really lucky to win that Oaklawn handicap. I mean, if you watch the replay, Last Samurai tries to squeeze through a hole in the fence that wasn't really there and literally bounces off the rail, loses a ton of momentum, and then kind of re-rallies and still barely gets beat by Rosario screaming on Proxy up the center of the track. I mean, he got very fortunate, I think, to win that race. And Last Samurai is not a horse that I think has a huge shot in here, and I think he's better than Proxy's. So that's kind of my opinion of Proxy.
Grade 1 winner Proxy.
Grade 1 winner Proxy. You're right.
Yeah. Won the Stephen Foster last year. Or not Stephen Foster, the Clark. Won the Clark last year. Yeah. So I don't know. I thought this was a fun race. This is I don't know. The more I look at this, the more I'm just like, man, Rattle and Roll should win this race, right? If he stays in. But of course I'll overthink this and use 5 horses, and I'll probably be dead by the spot anyway. So in my horizontal, not actually dead. I will be very much alive, hopefully. And hopefully in the pool. Because I'll be at a pool party apparently, or a harness track. We haven't decided yet where we're going to end up, but let's move on to the last race here. How we're going to close this out? 1 mile on the turf, the Tepin Stakes. Who the hell is Tepin? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
No, nobody knows. Nobody knows who Tepin is. Tepin is a Cassie horse, right?
It was a turf horse. I forget who trained.
Yeah, but he was
Do
Mark
you know
Cassie,
who?
right?
Hold on. Do you know who Wise Dan is?
He's a turf horse, right? I saw him won like a 4-horse field at Belmont or something that was like super impressive, but it was like an old video, and that guy from the sandwich commercial was calling it.
The guy from the sandwich.
Yeah, the guy who messed up the Belmont call. Why are you looking like that? Look at. Do they have a part? Is part of Saratoga named after Wise Dan? No.
Yes.
Shut up.
There is. Yeah.
There is. Damn.
Yeah.
I know there's the Easy Goer, right?
That was what I remember. There's a bar named after Wise Dan.
Yeah. Well, he's no 4-star Dave.
No, he's no 4-star Dave. No.
Or a Voodoo Song.
Oh God,
Voodoo Song. Voodoo Song's getting a black type this year.
Are they renaming the Forbidden Apple the Voodoo Song?
No, that's at Belmont. They're gonna name a.
That's at Belmont. They moved the Forbidden Apple to Belmont.
Always was at Belmont. It was only at Saratoga for like a year or two. They do that thing where some races move back and forth. It was one of those ones. So it's going back to Belmont. They're naming a black type the Voodoo Song. So.
Oh yeah, because the Woodward's at Belmont now, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, which is that one.
How gross is that? How does that make you feel?
That makes me. That is not okay. There's certain things that are not okay. That is not okay.
No. I love it. With the Arlington Million being at Colonial, good. I hope you understand what that
the Arlington 100K to like. Starbucks. That is,
when they pulled the racing folks, they said, you know what racing really needs? More black type listed stages.
Yeah, exactly.
So Alex
they're renaming something.
Alex saying is Tepin was a Cassie horse. So we just know that if he was with anybody but Mark Cassie, this horse would have been a superstar. So because no one does more with less, or less with more than Mr. Mark Cassie. So. Imagine Chad Brown had him. He'd be as good as Wise Dan, who I don't know who he is. But
Josh, God.
Anyways, the Tepin Stakes here, and I thought this is a pretty fun race. I think your 2-1 favorite is Jagera. Yeah, Jagera is your 2-1 favorite in this spot. and then I think once you kind of get it, well, Heavenly Sundays 5-2, and then once you kind of get outside of those two, it gets very very wide open. So if you can kind of get around those two, I think there is a chance for some value. I just don't know if you can get around those two, but I'm interested to see what you guys think. Caleb, where did you kind of land here?
Uh, I'm not trying to get around those two. I think it's a 2 horse race between Heavenly Sunday and Zygera. I think Zygera is probably a little bit better. I was high, very, very high on this filly as a 2 year old. It didn't do much running in the Breeders' Cup, but that was a pretty tough post to make much of a run from, and she didn't get a good break. So I don't really care. She clearly showed that she lost nothing in that start this year, where she just dusted a field pretty comfortably. I think she is a deserving favorite and very much the horse to beat. But I also have a lot of respect for Heavenly Sunday, who I don't think is that far behind. I said on last week's stream that Edgewood at Churchill is arguably the best, filly turf race we've seen for 3 year olds so far. Between some really nice horses coming out of that. Mission of Joy came out of that to absolutely crush a field at Churchill next out. I think that was the Regret Stakes she went on to win. Papilio came out of that race to run good. Liguria just came out of that race, a Chad Brown horse. She won a stakes race last Saturday. What was the grade 2 that just ran last Saturday at Belmont? Um, it doesn't matter.
Where's
Whatever.
Road Warrior at? Damn it.
I know. Where's Road Warrior? Anyway, whatever that grade 2 was, last Saturday, the Chad Brown horse that, was pretty handily beaten by Heavenly Sunday. Liguria came out to win that race, pretty impressively, actually. So, yeah, I just thought that was a strong race as well. Probably the race of the year we've seen as far as quality goes. I think these two are just very, very, very good and just a significant cut above the rest of this field. I think you could beyond those two. I think you can really make a case for about 4 others, but I think that the combined chances of those 4 probably doesn't add up to either one of the top 2 individually. So I'm going to go 3-5 and just kind of go down with the top 2 choices in here rather uncreatively.
Yeah, I don't dislike the 3 or the 5. Just isn't my top choice in this field. I ended up going to the 7 horse, Girl Named Charlie, for Tom Amos. This is a horse that I like to cut back to a mile. The horse's best performance that fairgrounds race was at a mile. And if you're a time form person, this horse has increased figs every single race of the last 4, and arguably and honestly, every single turf race has gotten just a tiny little bit faster. She probably needs to take a little bit of a step forward here to end up on the podium here. Did have a nice race at Ellis where she ran second in that 5.5 furlong race before she broke her maiden. And I think she seems to be the type that just keeps kind of getting better every single race. She should be seems to be in fairly okay form right now. I realized she was beaten by Heavenly Sunday 2 back, but arguably she had some rough traffic there. She was kind of blocked and couldn't really make her run, and she definitely wasn't disgraced in that race. And then they tried to stretch her out a little bit in the last. She ran a nice figure, but I think that's probably a little further than she wants to go, and they're kind of getting real now and bringing her back to that miler, which is what she wants to be. Again, make what you will of the jocks and the connection, but I think she's an interesting player in here. I think I get every bit of 6-1, and she's the kind of horse that, I don't know, maybe I'm getting cute, but I think she's pretty interesting in here.
I had her nowhere.
Who?
Girl Named Charlie.
Mm.
I don't know, Mark. You're getting all creative over here. I'm not used to it.
Yeah, Alex has a good point. I mean, 2 wins both came on Lasix. Her figures got better off Lasix as she continued to improve, but the results didn't necessarily match up. So always ambiguous when that happens.
Yeah, no, that's valid. That's valid.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm just getting too creative trying to get around Jagera. I have her with a question mark. Same thing with Wonderful Lady. I thought was a little bit interesting here coming off a win, and gets just a humongous jock upgrade from Vinny Cheminot to Tyler Gaffleone. So I thought Wonderful Lady was a bit interesting here. My two top picks are actually Heavenly Sunday, who's the other short price in here. She's kind of the one I preferred, I think, of the two short prices. So maybe it's like not that insane to toss out Shigera if I'm using the other short price. Um, but Brad Cox, Flo Giroux, I mean that connection, winning everything, coming in off a win in the Edgewood, and I think you know came out of that Papilio race at the Appalachian. So I think there's some back form in there. Um, yeah, and I just saw the short prices. This is the one that kind of excited me a little bit more. Is going to be forwardly placed. Um, the other horse though I did like was the two Safine here. And maybe I'm just a humongous Luis Saez simp, and I see him on a forwardly placed horse on the turf in Kentucky, and I feel like I need to use him. But Eddie Keneally's no slouch either when it comes to running on the turf in Kentucky. I think this is a really, really good jockey trainer pairing here. I think that this horse fits Luis Saez's running style, coming in off a win in Indiana. Um, you know, looks slow on Brisnet. I'm guessing on other metrics probably also looks slow, but I mean, you're getting 5 to 1. I think this is another horse that could take a step forward here. I mean, just regally bred for going long on the turf with Warfront on top, Dynaformer on the bottom. So I thought this is a horse that's got a lot going for it, and no reason to see why this horse couldn't improve off the last one. Is probably gonna need to improve quite a bit, but I think you're gonna get a bit of a price. I think on this two Safine. So I'm 2-3 here. I might use a little bit of the four. I'm going to have a soft fade on the five in this spot. Um, and definitely not using Mark 7 anywhere. What an idiot. Um, but and I saw Charles also. He also likes Wonderful Lady a bit in here. The four, kind of a horse in here with a bit of French pedigree. So
Yeah, if the turf is soft, she shouldn't mind.
what was there anything else that you liked in here, Caleb, or were you just strictly on those two
I'm
short
pretty strict
prices?
just on the 3 and the 5. I mean, your 2 is one I kind of looked at. I didn't love the two wins came at Laurel and Indiana Grand, but yeah, the horse sort of fits. I mean, I looked at Mark 7 a little bit. I looked at the 4 a little bit. The only other one I kind of give a glance to was the 6 Metaphysical, who Briz has marked as like an E7 or E6. I scratched it off because I thought that was bullshit. I think this is more of an EP kind of a horse that has the ability to sit. And probably can't win this race. Probably just isn't good enough to win. But I kind of looked at her. I'm like, well, that Gulfstream Grade 3 that she ran. I mean, she was fourth, but only beaten 3/4 of a length to Heavenly Sunday, who is a pretty clear cut second choice in here, and who went on to go on it and is a pretty good filly. So I just thought Metaphysical is one in here that's going to get completely overlooked and maybe isn't this good. I mean, some of the spots she's been racing in probably haven't been all that difficult, but she's one that I think could maybe hit the board at a huge price. I don't know if I'm going to have her on top because I feel pretty strongly about the 3 and the 5, but she's one I might work in underneath.
Metaphysical was one that looked really interesting on optics, if I remember correctly. Yeah, there's this big old square here right in the middle, and was was a little bit interesting. I didn't see it like generally with optics. I like to look at optics and then kind of match it up in the PPs, right? To kind of like be like, okay, like this makes sense to me. I kind of didn't see this with metaphysical, so I wasn't super keen on believing where this horse kind of sat on the plot. I mean, Brisnet has his horse as an E7, and when you look at this plot, I mean, that does not look like an E7 whatsoever.
Right.
So I was a little confused on what to do with metaphysical. If I could trust the plot 100%, I definitely think it would be one I would use because I mean, on a turf race that just looks like a horse that's gonna sit off the pace in that second group and get first run on everybody. So I thought it was super interesting in that case, but I when I looked at the PPs, I couldn't really match it up, especially just the horse seemed to always be pretty forwardly placed, and it doesn't seem to be one that kind of passes a lot of horses. So I didn't really know what to do with the horse there. That was a big sigh mark.
Oh, was that? Sorry. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I don't trust. I trust the plot more than the Briz. I'll say that. I don't think this is not an E7 horse. I don't think. I mean, it may be because that's not a subjective classification. I mean, E7 is E7, but I don't think this horse is going to perform like a typical E7 go out to the lead. It was on a 5-horse field at Penn National last out where kind of ran evenly, but 3 back, and then 5 back, the horse did close and just miss. So I think this horse has the ability to have more of a stalking trip if the race sets up that way.
All right. Anything else on this card that you guys want to talk about? Mark, did you look at anything else in here?
No, I just
You looked at the bare minimum, didn't you?
Yes, I did. It's Ellis.
I glanced at.
Let me rephrase. It's a CDI product, so.
I did glance at race 3. That's the only other stakes race in the card. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to walk through the whole thing, but I just thought it was kind of interesting in that it feels like, and we've talked a lot about no speed in a lot of these races, this is a race with a boatload of speed. I mean, it looks like the 1 horse Mustache, the 3 Desert Duke, the 4 Gigante, the 5 Hidden Path, all are pretty much need the lead or quite close to it type of runners in here. And even a horse like Wadsworth, who's not a need the lead runner, has tactical speed. I thought that Mark's favorite horse, I'm just assuming because it's from Dubai, the number 6, Shahar, made a ton of sense in here at a silly price of 8-1. Yeah, I know they're adding blinkers, but they're also adding Leparoux. So I feel like that kind of cancels out for where the horse is going to be. And it's going to be somewhere in the back half of the field. This is the only horse that has been, proven to be able to pass other horses, as evidenced by his Dubai races, and then the way they tried to ride him in that Churchill Stakes. I think 8-1's a crazy price, and that's a good bet on that horse there.
Yeah, and the plot's going to be real stupid on it because, kind of just missed the break and didn't really do much.
Yeah, it only has much running. He kind of ran even. I mean, Wadsworth's the other horse that probably trips out in here and is certainly the more proven horse. I'm not against Wadsworth in there, but that horse is going to take all the beating, I think, whereas Sherrar might get as overlooked as a Todd Pletcher can be.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm surprised you're not all about Gigante in this spot, Caleb, because you are a Caesar simp, and this horse did win the Caesar Stakes last time out. So
true. 33-1.
I'm head scratching at why that 6 is there. I agree with you. The run style makes a ton of sense, but sort of it's odd to see Todd campaigning a horse in Kentucky. I mean, second start in a row, so must be something there, but that I'm not seeing. But it's just a bit of a head scratcher for me.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Why is he? Again, why is this horse not running at Saratoga in something?
Well, the horse probably just isn't good enough.
No, probably.
If you look at the running lines on the 6, I kind of agree with you, Caleb. You look at the notes on the Dubai races. This is a tracker, right? This is totally a P type, and I think that with Julian aboard, I mean, Julian turns E types into S types. So I mean, there's no reason why this.
With Julian up, this horse might be 30 back at first call.
Yeah, that might be. Hey, maybe he
might be where you want to be.
That, but I kind of saw it the same way as you, Caleb. I thought there was a ton of speed in here, and I think the 2 probably trips out, but the 6 is a little bit interesting. But I think that's gonna do it for us. That was that might be record time for us getting through 6 races, or we're just getting faster. I don't know. I mean,
or the races sucked and none of us really cared.
Well, I will say that Mark, when you were gone last week, me, Caleb, and Caitlin got through 24 horse fields in about an hour.
So you're saying it's my fault?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm not saying it's not your fault.
That was a triple not? A triple negative, Josh.
Yeah.
That was wow. I'm impressed.
Sixer says he needs Uncle Sully to show up and call his nephews and chat to hit bingo this week. But looks like Uncle Sully stayed. He probably had other stuff going on. But thank you guys for hanging out as always. Check us out at wrong_lead on Twitter, on thewronglead.com. new episode of Drinking Champagne is up where we talk about Andrew's trip through Italy, a little bit of the Hawthorne contest, and is horse racing nothing but luck? I don't know. Some people are saying.
People are
I mean, they're
asking.
mostly staying in off topic in the horse racing Discord, but people are talking about luck. There's no way Eddie Olczyk could have handicapped that race and picked that horse. It's all luck. We'll see you guys later.